On the stage, the few people's gazes turned sinister as they had already seen through Huang Yueli's uncommon trait. Teach this lass's result. Why does it make me feel it's so unrealistic? Is it my misperception? Tang Jinhua creased his brows, feeling that something was amiss. Your feeling is correct, this lass didn't put in her entire effort. Correct. The first piece of strength testing stone was 3,000 gene. Second piece was 3,000 gene. All the way till 12 piece, it was still 3,000 gene. How could there be no variations in the profound energy in every single piece? Who was she trying to fool? It only states an obvious fact. 3,000 gene to her. Not only was it not her entire strength, it's probably not even 30% of her strength. So she just casually struck out with no effort at all. Moreover, to have struck out continuously 12 times at such a fast pace, and yet maintaining the same strength. The control over her profound energy has already been practiced to perfection. After the few elderly analyzed the situation, they nodded their heads as they could see each other's praises for Huang Yueli in their eyes. Tang Jinhua was dumbstruck. But you mean to say it's possible? The fluctuation of the lass's profound energy was only its second stage realm. But according to what you say, if 3,000 gene was not even 30% of her strength, then her total profound energy should probably have exceeded 10,000 gene, and that is something that only third stage realm practitioners can achieve. According to common sense, it cannot happen naturally. But if she's the biological daughter of Bai Lu Feng, then I feel this is not rare. After all, Bai Lu Feng had achieved even more ridiculous things that year. That's right. Look at the lass's countenance. She really bears some resemblance to that stinky kid. The few of them started to make guesses. Tang Jinhua still retained a face of disbelief. I told you all already, Bai Lu Feng's daughter is a cultivation trash, and she is definitely not. Stop making wild guesses. Vice Principal Ling fiddled with his beard as he beamed. Then let's wait for the result of the next two assessments. Even if she's not Bai Lu Feng's daughter, just based on her earlier performance, perhaps her potential is much higher than Song Yaru. The first round of assessment came to an end, and very quickly. The ranking results were posted and was pasted on an eye-grabbing piece of huge rock at the public square. Huang Yueli took a look. Song Yaru had well-deservedly gotten first place while she was ranked 6th. But Bai Ruo Qi had obtained an unbelievably low ranking, placed 48th. The reason for Celestial Light Academy to post the results out was a method of motivation to let everyone see how they ranked against their competitors, which made everyone increase their sense of crisis and competitive awareness. As expected, many examinees who were lowly ranked were filled with a sense of crisis as their expressions congealed. They had consciously felt that they were already on the verge of life and death, and if they didn't try their best in the next round, they would be eliminated. I believe everyone had already seen your own ranking in the first round of assessment. This ranking is only momentarily, as the next 2 rounds of assessment would increase in difficulty, so it would be much more difficult to obtain higher marks. Therefore, even if you're ranked in the top few, you shouldn't lower your guard. The examiner said some words of encouragement as he hurriedly entered the main topic. Next, we'll be starting the second round of assessment. Everyone, please look towards the back of the right side. Everyone turned and looked towards the direction where the examiner had pointed. You can also listen on. Celestial Light Academy was built right beside a spiritual artery, which had an abundance of profound energy. The public square at the entrance of school is sitting on the lap of the mountain, and the 4 corners were surrounded by mountains. On the right rear end of the public square, 2 tall mountains sat opposite each other, and in between was an approximate distance of 300 meters. The 2 mountains were linked together by a thick steel cable. The examiner said, "Do everyone see that steel chain in between the mountains?" The second assessment's requirements is for everyone to pass through the steel cable in succession from the left side of this mountain to the right side of that mountain. The shorter the amount of time used, the higher your marks will be. Hearing that, many of them heaved a sigh of relief. Treading on that tiny chain of steel cable over the cliff was possibly terrifying for ordinary people and a very thrilling matter. But to practitioners, that steel cable bridge wasn't considered too difficult. So the main question now was how to unleash their fastest speed to reach the other side of the mountain. Upon seeing the crowd's relaxed expressions, the examiner coughed slightly and continued. I have to remind everyone that this steel cable bridge isn't as simple as all of you think. This steel cable is one of the official training grounds that Celestial Light Academy official students train in, and the difficulty is very high. All of them went into a blank. The array masters from our academy had personally drawn up some array patterns on the cable. The minute you step on the steel cables, these array patterns will be activated, and around the cable surroundings will appear a fixed number of arrows repeatedly shuttling around the vicinity of the cable path. Once you've been struck by the arrow, a large amount of points will be deducted. If you're so unlucky to be struck off and fall into the bottom of the cliff, then your examination qualification would be canceled, and this round's assessment will directly be cleared to zero. Directly cleared to zero, and will be struck off and fall to the bottom of the cliff? When they heard the examiner's detailed explanation, everyone finally realized the difficulty of this assessment, and they drew in a cold breath. The cliff looked like it was a few hundred meters in depth. If one were to look downwards, one would not be able to see the bottom, so they did not know what was lurking below. Even if they were practitioners and their bodies were well built and tough, but to fall into the cliff would be unbearable. Moreover, Celestial Light Academy's official students were almost all second-stage realm practitioners, and many were in third and fourth stage realm. For the arrows to be able to strike them off the cliff, the force was imaginable. If they were unfortunately struck, then the injury would probably not be light. But as this is everyone's first time taking this assessment, so I've already reduced the quantity of the arrows to the lowest limit possible to a total of 12 arrows. Other than that, for fairness' sake, the first 10 examinees who take part in the assessment would have increased points awarded, so everyone can voluntarily volunteer yourself. Silence filled the public square. At this point, everyone hesitated, not knowing if they should volunteer or not. It was clear to see from the first round of assessment that those who joined in first would be disadvantaged, as those hiding behind will be able to learn from their experiences. But the examiner also said that those who volunteered first would have additional points. The examiner saw that no one volunteered and said, "If no one is willing to volunteer, then I will draw lots." But those who were drawn would not have any additional points. "Let me have a go." A lean-built youth walked out. It's Liu family's seventh young master, Liu Zicheng. In the first round of assessment, he ranked 17th. Oh, it's him. Liu Zicheng's power is indeed strong, and his cultivation among the examinees is one of the tops. Earlier, he had suffered because of his inexperience and miscalculated, which is why his ranking is so far back. You can also listen on. A gloomy expression hung on Liu Zicheng's face with a sense of non-contentment. Earlier in that first round of assessment, his number was placed rather forward and had not realized the hidden trap in that examination question. So he used all his might on the first strength testing stone and obtained a total of 3,700 gene of strength. But who knew that to continuously unleash so much power, his condition deteriorated towards the end, and his final result was only a 17th rank. This, to Liu Zicheng, was the greatest insult yet. He was aiming for the top 5 ranking, and if he were to get a ranking of 10 and below, then he was unable to give an answer to his family's elders. So this time, upon hearing the examiner say that the first few people who volunteered had additional points, he was the first to stand out. In the first round, the 12 strength testing stones from Celestial Light Academy was said to have dealt everyone with an unprepared hand. But there was nothing special about this second round. There were many large families who designed and built steel cables across the river and was considered as a popular form of training method in the South Sky region. Only the array pattern inscribed were somewhat different for each family. The other parts were almost the same. At this point, to those disciples in the large families, this round was of no difficulty at all. Very soon, Liu Zicheng confidently stood at the starting point. Start. The examiner shouted the command to start, and his figure went speeding off. His foot slightly touched the steel cable and had already jumped a few meters of distance. At this moment, the steel cable gave out a glaring blue ray. The array pattern had been activated. Lu Zicheng's speed was extremely fast, but at the same time when he increased his pace, his attention was also concentrated as he focused on defending against the changes outside. After running for around 1/6 of the distance, a swishing sound could be heard ahead of him, for sharp arrows came flying tumultuously towards him, sending vibrations in midair. Lu Zicheng had long prepared himself as he leaned to one side and avoided the arrows. At the same time, he had already ran a huge distance away, for arrows reached his back and suddenly turned its directions. In midair, it split into two, and in a split second, it turned into 8 arrows and had distributed itself into the top, middle, and bottom routes, attacking from his back at a flying speed. This time, the arrow's speed had increased a notch. Lu Zicheng had a share of experience, and when he heard the breaking sound from his back, he immediately realized that the arrows had turned back, and he hastily avoided it. His feet kept swaying, and he almost fell off the cliff, but eventually he forcefully stabilized himself. However, he was not able to avoid the last arrow as his right shoulder was grazed badly and blood flowed. Fwah! Heavens! The crowd below the mountain who raised their heads to look gave out, exclaimed loudly. The speed and might of the arrow on the steel cable was much faster than any of their imagination. The attack positions were also very artful, and those who were weaker in their movements were possibly not able to avoid it at all. That is just too terrifying. Earlier, if those 8 arrows were to simultaneously attack me from behind, I'll definitely not be able to avoid it at all. Lu Zicheng is really good. He actually managed to pass such a thrilling test. Yes, he's now just a 10 over meters from the ending point. With his speed, he should be able to reach in 3 breaths' time. His speed is much faster than me by several times, and since he's the first contender to take the assessment, there would be additional marks. This time round, his ranking will probably raise by a large margin. You can also listen on. In the midst of everyone's discussions, Li Zicheng had already seen the destination. Just 2 or 3 more steps, and he would be able to arrive safely. A joyous look flashed past Lu Zicheng's eyes, and he increased his speed further, but just at this moment. An unforeseen event happened abruptly. The sound of broken space was heard again. This time, the arrows actually appeared from all 4 directions, and the attack speed was much faster than the previous time by several notches. Lu Zicheng's expression changed. Just from this horrifying sound, he had already judged that the crushing attack from all directions, he was unable to avoid it. Even if it was on the ground, to avoid such a precise attack would be extremely difficult. Moreover, he was threading on a thin steel cable, which he already had problems trying to keep his balance. But he had already felt the might of those arrows, and if he didn't manage to avoid it and were continuously attacked by those few arrows, he would definitely be seriously injured. Under no choice, he could only do his best to avoid it. The unfortunate thing was he was still struck by 2 arrows, and one of it was lodged into his thigh as blood flowed onto the ground. The entire steel cable was shaking vigorously as it kept jolting, shaking in midair substantially. Lu Zicheng was like an ant hanging on a thread and almost fell down. Luckily, his determination was strong enough as he endured the tremendous pain for the last few meters, and once he reached the destination, he went limp and fell onto the ground. Lu Zicheng. Points awarded for his speed in passing this round. 87 points. Struck by 3 arrows. Each arrow is a 20-point deduction. Additional points for the first contender to take part in the assessment. 30 points. Total, 57 points. The examiner announced his final marks. Upon hearing this, the crowd below the stage had turned pale with fright. Heavens, if you're struck by 1 arrow, it actually costs a 20-point deduction. Based on Lu Zicheng's speed, and he was struck by 3 arrows, his total after deduction was only 20 over points. Then if I were to go up, wouldn't I be left with a negative score? Deduction of points is still okay. Didn't you see? Lu Zicheng was almost struck off the cliff earlier. If he fell down, then the marks would be cleared to 0. It's equivalent to being pre-eliminated. Examiner asked, "Next person, who will like to volunteer?" The crowd looked at each other in dismay, not daring to step forward. Even Lu Zicheng, whose power was publicly acknowledged, had suffered so badly. The others simply had no confidence at all. Examiner repeated a few more times, and upon seeing no response, he said, "Then I will start drawing lots." "Examiner, let me give it a try." The person who spoke out was actually Bai Ruoqi. The crowd's gaze suddenly changed. With Lu Zicheng as a precedent, those who dared to jump out and try was absolutely courageous. Moreover, Bai Ruoqi's cultivation was only its second stage, first level, which wasn't really high among all the examinees. Even Huang Yueli couldn't help but see her in new light. Bai Ruoqi especially seemed to love showing off today. Moreover, she had been super confident. Could it be that she had the guidance of some superior person? Even those few people on stage were surprised. Oh, this lass had jumped out once again. In the previous round of strength testing, she was able to think of a way to get past it. This round is to test one's bodily movements and is much more dangerous. If her potential lacked just that little bit, she would not be able to pass this round. So what tactic could she possibly think of? Who knows? Wasn't this lass's comprehension outstanding? I really want to see what idea she can think of. Bai Ruoqi stood at the starting point, and under the various gazes, she felt slightly nervous. However, this round, she came prepared. You can also listen on. Bai Ruoqi moved forward with light steps and thread onto the steel cable. Everyone's eyes were wide as they looked carefully at her movements. Based on Bai Ruoqi's background, cultivation, and innate talent, just how strong was her bodily movements? She probably didn't even have half of Lu Zicheng's standard, so how was she preparing to get over to the other side? Or could it be that although her cultivation was ordinary, but she had learnt some heaven-level footwork, which had extraordinary accomplishments on her bodily movements? In actual fact, everyone had just thought too much. Bai Ruoqi had just walked a few steps, and everyone's eyeballs were about to fall off. Because her speed was really slow, simply too slow. Just based on this speed, she probably only achieved 30% of Lu Zicheng's speed. And based on this bodily movements, how did she even manage to pass this round assessment? However, when Huang Yueli saw this, she couldn't help but frown. This is really strange. Does Bai Ruoqi really know something? She actually chose to use this tactic. Bai Ruoqi moved forward at snail speed, as though just stabling herself on the steel cable and not falling down was already taking up a huge amount of her strength. If the arrows appeared, she might be struck off any time. But as time went by, the crowd gradually noticed that something was amiss. Although Bai Ruoqi's speed was slow, but the arrows which were directed at her seemed to have slowed down as well. Moreover, the intensity of the attack had also turned slow. What situation is this? The arrow's speed had turned slow. Could it be that the arrow's attack speed is linked to the practitioner's speed of advancement? Under the astonished glares of the crowd, Bai Ruoqi passed the entire steel cable with a snail speed, and in between, she had only been struck once by an arrow. Her total points was even higher than Lu Zicheng. This time, the crowd was bustling with excitement, as they had never expected that the array on the steel cable had a concealed principle. Moreover, it was picked out by Bai Ruoqi. What kind of comprehension did she have to have this foresight? Under the crowd's gasps of admiration, Bai Ruoqi raised her head high as she returned to her position and at the same time cast a chilly glance to Huang Yueli. This time, her performance was even more outstanding than the first round of assessment. Earlier, Vice Principal Ling had given her a prospective core student title, and this time would be let her become a core student directly. Bai Ruoqi was filled with anticipation. In actual fact, the few people on the stage had indeed been shocked by her performance, and momentarily, they could not believe their eyes. What was happening? Had that last Bai Ruoqi really seen through the abstruseness of the array on the steel cable? The array on this steel cable indeed increased according to the practitioner's speed, and the intensity would keep on increasing. If one speed was slowed down, the intensity of the attack power would also turn weak, so just by spending a bit more time, one would be able to pass through safely. Tang Jinhua frowned as he said, "This isn't possible, right?" The array on the steel cable was put together by several fourth-ranked array masters and armament masters. Moreover, for this assessment to successfully proceed, we had intentionally examined and repaired it a few days ago. Unless Bai Ruo Qi is also a fourth rank or above array master, otherwise, how would she be able to see through it? Perhaps this lass's comprehension power is really that high and was able to see the abstruseness. Tang Jinhua cried out, "Impossible! Array skill is an extremely unfathomable knowledge. So no matter how high one's comprehension was, one would require corresponding foundation knowledge and mentality, and not just based on power of comprehension to be able to grasp the underlying concept. You can also listen on. If it wasn't like that, and just based on one's strong comprehension, then won't everyone be able to become an array master? But the truth is not like this. Array comprehension and martial arts comprehension are completely two different matters. Then could it be possible that Bai Ruo Qi was really a fourth-ranked array master? Are you kidding me? Tang Jinhua bore an insulted look. If she had obtained fourth rank at such a young age, then she would already be enlisted by Soaring Heaven's Continent's 7 sacred lands. Why would she come to Celestial Light Academy for the entrance examinations? This sounds logical too. Then there could only be one truth. Vice Principal Ling, who was all smiles earlier, had his brows tightly creased together now. Looks like there's a traitor in our academy who had leaked out the contents and key to passing the stage. No wonder Bai Ruo Qi could easily score such high points in the first stage of assessment. What? Cheating? There's actually someone who dared to cheat? In the past 10 over years, no one had dared to cheat in Celestial Light Academy. She's just a lass from a small country. Would she dare to? Someone spoke out, still unconvinced. Vice Principal Ling said, "We are only suspecting now. Let's continue to see the situation on the next round of assessment before we discuss again. If someone really cheated, then we absolutely cannot let it rest." Bai Ruo Qi didn't know that her overly extraordinary performance had already raised the suspicions of the Academy's management. She was still joyfully satisfied while waiting for her commendation and reward. In the end, no one passed any message to the examiner, and the assessment quickly resumed, making Bai Ruo Qi rather disappointed. With Bai Ruo Qi as a precedent, everyone realized quickly that they could make use the tactic of lowering their speed to guarantee their pass in this stage. Although moving at such a slow pace would not end up with high points, but it was much better than risking by speeding up but ending up falling off the cliff with their points clear to 0. In this way, the assessment duration had been lengthened. Finally, Song Yaru couldn't take things as it was and took the initiative to walk over to the side of the steel cable. "Mr. Examiner, if this carries on, what time would it be? All of these people's speed would become slower and slower, and later on there would be the third round of assessment. Will we be able to complete all the assessments today?" The examiner's attitude towards Song Yaru was very courteous. "Miss Song, what do you think we should do?" Song Yaru said, "Just give those who takes longer than a quarter of an hour to pass the round 0 marks. The way of martial arts is a constant struggle against heavens. For those trash who dare not even cross a steel cable bridge, even if they manage to enter Celestial Light Academy, they'd also be cowards and don't even expect to stand out among the others." She left the words icily, and with a touch of her toes, she flew towards the steel cable. Song Yaru's speed was extremely fast, even faster by a fold as compared to Lu Zicheng. Because of this, the attack she suffered was several times more intense than Lu Zicheng's. To shuttle between speeding arrows was extremely swift and fierce as she was consecutively attacked. It was obvious that Song Yaru didn't have it easy trying to avoid the arrows, and she had even been struck by one towards the end. But even so, her speed had not decreased. After she had passed the stage, her total points was indeed more than the others by a large chunk. Huang Yueli smiled as she saw this, and felt admiration towards this young Miss Song. Although Song Yaru was slightly proud, but her innate talent and potential was indeed much higher than others. Moreover, this heaven-defying drive was extremely praiseworthy. So she indeed had the capital to be proud. You can also listen on. With Song Yaru as a lead, several examinees with higher innate talents also revealed their real capabilities. Different from Bai Ruo Chi, who came from a small place, they were all disciples of well-known families, and everyone wanted face. To use such trickery to pass the examinations, even if they could enter Celestial Light Academy, it would be embarrassing for them. At that point of time, the assessment resumed back to normal. Huang Yueli had also mingled in this batch of people and passed the assessment. Her speed wasn't very fast, but she certainly wasn't slow. She maintained the speed of a second-stage realm first-level practitioner should have, as she used a neither fast nor slow pace to pass through this assessment. As her speed wasn't too outstanding, most people didn't notice her. Only those with insight noticed her abnormality. This Biroli is really something. Did you all notice that when she passed the stage earlier, she wasn't struck by any arrow at all? Although there was a thrilling moment when she avoided the arrows, but it was an arduous task to avoid being struck. In today's batch of examinees, she's the only one, as even Song Yaru had been struck by one arrow. No, Elder Hu, you've misjudged. The elderly with the surname who said in dissatisfaction, "How could I have misjudged? Could it be that you feel that she also cheated? From what I see, it may not be so. Although the speed she used wasn't considered fast, but it wasn't exceedingly slow. Rather than saying exceedingly, it's more like she was suppressing her cultivation. I didn't say she cheated. I only wanted to say when she avoided the arrows, it wasn't thrilling at all. Didn't you notice it? Every time she avoided it, she didn't really move at all. Those arrows seemed to just brush past her. Just that close, but it still didn't strike her. This is thrilling? I think she's doing this intentionally. It's more ridiculous if you were to put it in this way. If she managed to avoid the arrows that easily, then how much is her potential really? Even if it's a third-stage course student, they also don't have it easy on this steel cable. Who knows? Vice Principal Ling laughed with a deep meaning. I feel it more and more that she really is by Lu Jing's daughter. The second round of assessment ended, and the new ranking had quickly been totaled up. Song Yaru was still deserving of the #1 place, and she had already pulled a large distance away from the second place. It could be said that she was leading by a large margin. Huang Yuel's ranking had dropped to 10th place. It looked like she was almost going to drop out of the top 10 ranking any time. Quite a number of people had cast her a sympathy glance, but she didn't think anything about it. As for Bai Ruo Chi, as her performance had been outstanding this time, and as the second contender, she had additional points awarded, so her ranking had raised by a huge chunk to the 31st place. The gap to the 30th place was just one step away. Bai Ruo Chi looked at her own name on the ranking board as her eyes shined. Before she came to Sky Cloud City, she didn't even know if she was able to enter Celestial Light Academy, with the feeling that she would most likely drop out. Never in her wildest dreams had she dreamt that she would ever have such a high ranking. Now that she had gotten such good rankings in the first 2 stages of assessment, then after the 3rd stage, perhaps she might be able to enter the top 30. After all, in the 3rd round of assessment, she had already mastered the rhythm, and she had the confidence that she would be able to be awarded higher marks as compared to other people. You can also listen on. The 3rd round of assessment started closely after. The examiner pointed to a plot of empty land not too far away and said, "The last round of assessment is very simple, and it is to assess everyone's willpower. Do you all see that formation? Later, all of you must enter within the boundary of the formation. Once the array has been activated, it would unleash profound energy to simulate a practitioner's coercion. At the beginning, the pressure would still be rather weak, but as time passes, the pressure will become stronger and stronger. Your aim is to last as long as you can under that pressure. For those of you who cannot sustain, simply crush the number plate you have in your hands, and you will be ejected from the array. The longer you stay in the array, the higher points you will attain. All right, Now all of you please proceed to enter. The array boundary is very large, and it was more than enough to contain at least 20,000 people. Not that the total number of examinees were lesser than 200 people. It seemed rather empty when they all entered. Most of them were in a daze as they looked around for a moment before they sat cross-legged at a position by the verge of the array. Bai Ruo Qi sized up her surroundings and laughed in secret. She could easily guess that these examinees probably felt that the position by the verge of the array was the weakest point and the lesser pressure they would feel. In actual fact, in this array, the pressure was evenly distributed. Almost all of the positions would suffer the same kind of pressure. But of course, there was an exception. Bai Ruo Qi had walked all the way to the inside till she reached a distance of 30 meters away from the center before she stopped. After comparing the distance between the left and right side, she too sat down cross-legged. Since it was an array, there would definitely be an array eye. The array eye of this array, which simulated pressure, was in the center of the entire array, and the oppression was the strongest there. Moreover, it had far surpassed the surrounding positions, up to over 10 folds. However, beside the center position, the pressure will gradually decrease all the way until 30 meters away from the center, where the pressure would suddenly reduce to become the lowest point in the entire array. Outside the 30 meters perimeter, the amount of pressure was the same everywhere. The position which Bai Ruo Qi sat at now was the position where the pressure was at the minimum, so the amount of pressure that she was under was only half of what the others had. So this meant that she would be able to last longer than most people. When Huang Yueli entered, she already found out the abstruseness of this array. In her eyes, it was no secret where the position of the lowest pressure was at. However, she did not choose to go to that place where the pressure was at the least like Bai Ruo Qi, but instead casually found any place to sit down. Bai Ruo Qi gave a cold sneer when she saw her sitting down. In her eyes, Huang Yueli had just broken through to the second stage realm, so their cultivations were the same. Now, in this array, whatever profound skills or tactics could not be used. It all boiled down to their cultivation and willpower, and she had already taken up such a good spot. Perhaps she might even last longer than Huang Yueli in this round. Bai Ruo Qi would have never expected that the minute she sat down, the higher management of the academy on the stage all started to frown. This time, it shouldn't be a coincidence anymore, right? This coercion array is a 6th-tier array. This array is something that even our academy's array masters could not set up, and we had to ask Celestial Light Sect to send someone to help us set it up. Bai Kuo Qi could even see through this? Trying to cheat a ghost? I hadn't expected that someone actually dared to cheat in the entrance examinations. She's really extremely daring. You can also listen on. This is the first time in the past 70 years that anyone dared to cheat, so we absolutely cannot tolerate it. That's right, we cannot tolerate it. We must investigate thoroughly. The few elderly started discussing this matter as their expressions turned ugly. Earlier, they had really thought that Celestial Light Academy had attracted an outstanding student with high power of understanding and specially pre-selected by Ruo Qi, giving her the prospective core student treatment. But now that they had found out that she had cheated, this was like a tight slap across their faces. The few elderly felt that they had been tricked. At such an old age, they were still swindled by this young lass, that heartache. They don't even want to mention it. However, the third round of assessment was about to start, and it cannot be interrupted. Everything had to wait till the end of this round's assessment before they could discuss further. At this moment, all the examinees had already taken their positions within the boundary of the array. Under the command of the examiner, the array was activated and the mysterious yet complicated array patterns were inscribed in mid-air as it gave out a faint blue glow, as though a dome encasing everyone within the array. All the examinees immediately felt the oppression of the surrounding profound energy. Initially, the pressure was still rather weak and was negligible, but as time passed by, the pressure gradually became stronger. In just under one incense timing, the examinees whose cultivation were weaker had already broke out in a sweat on their foreheads. After another incense's time had passed, The sweat on their foreheads had increased as their faces flushed red with their teeth clenched tightly, as though the next second, their entire body would explode. Quite a number of people had felt that they were unable to hold on any further. But the opportunity to take part in the entrance examinations of Celestial Light Academy was extremely rare, so no one wanted to admit defeat easily as they clenched their teeth while persisting on. A couple of breaths had passed by. A boom sound was heard as the first person finally could not hold on any further, smashing the number plate in his hands to pieces. His body was instantly ejected out of the array. This person could only feel the strong, oppressing pressure and had already been crushed to the verge, so when he was ejected outwards, he was almost in a semi-conscious state as all he could see were stars. It was until he reached the outside of the array where the pressure decreased before he regained consciousness. Lifting his head to look at the surroundings, he realized that he was the first to be ejected, and the youth immediately hung his head low in embarrassment. This round of assessing willpower was the toughest to surpass based on tactics. Basically, the assessment was to see when two powers collide under the same amount of power, the longer they persisted, that would also represent the potential of their future's cultivation. He was the first to be eliminated, so apparently, that went to say that his power was not enough and his potential was not a lot. The blow to him was not small at all. After a quarter of an hour, 10 over-examinees were ejected, and after all of them regained consciousness, they all bore the face of remorse and embarrassment. However, as time went past, more and more people were ejected. Those who had been ejected later, however, felt glad. With so many people outside who laid as a foundation for them, to many, they had already exceeded their normal selves. The number of people who remained in the array became lesser and lesser. After the array had been activated for 2 hours, there were only slightly more than 10 people who were still persisting inside. As for those examinees who were ejected, they no longer felt remorse for their own performance. They were more interested in who else were still in the array. You can also listen on. The total number of people who attended the examinations is 187 people. Now, those who were ejected from the array had tallied up to 172 people. There are still 15 people who are still in the array. The last person who had been ejected was still recuperating as his face was slightly green. A lingering fear persisted as he looked towards the array's direction, mumbling to himself. At the moment when I was ejected, the profound energy oppression in the array had reached the intensity of a 4th-stage realm practitioner. Moreover, it was still on the rise continuously. They're able to last so long. They are really too powerful. In our generation of young practitioners, they are really the cream of the crop. Among the examinees who had enrolled for the entrance examinations, Song Yaru had the highest cultivation and was merely at 2nd stage Realm 9 level. No one had yet to break through to 3rd stage realm. Just based on 2nd stage cultivation, to be able to transcend 2 large realms and go against a 4th stage practitioner's oppression was not something that an ordinary practitioner could do. Who else is still in the array? The crowd started to turn their heads one after another as they tried to recall the examinees' name list and use the elimination process to ascertain the contenders. Song Yuru, Lu Zicheng, Shui Jingchuan. The names were listed out one after another. Basically, those were the disciples from the famous families in Sky Cloud City and were the top 10 hot favorites. All right, there's also Bai Ruoli. She's a dark horse. Upon seeing that Huang Yueli had yet to be ejected, they recalled her ranking in the first 2 rounds and suddenly came to realize it. Discovering that her performance in the first 2 rounds was not particularly outstanding, with no explosive power, but in the real ranking, she was actually placed rather in front. How on earth did she do that? But that wasn't the most shocking thing. What they can't be. That by Ruoqi. She also seems to be in the array, too. Huh, how is that possible? Don't try to cheat me? How can it be fake? Take a look, she's sitting in the place near the center, much more than all other people. No wonder no one didn't notice her earlier. Having saying this aloud, quite a large number of people noticed that Bai Ruoqi had been sitting inside the array all the while without making any movements. although the sweat on her head kept sprouting out, looking as though she was almost not going to make it. But she had not been ejected yet, and had already made it to the last 15 finalists. The examinees present cried out in astonishment. Bairuoqi's performance today had been extremely eye-catching. Even though her cultivation, innate talent, cultivation method, profound skills, none of it was exemplary. In fact, among all the examinees, she was one of those at the bottom of the ladder. However, she had in all 3 rounds of assessment showed outstanding results after every round, making everyone's eyeballs almost dropping out. The reason for her to be able to come to this step was because her power of understanding was simply heaven-defying strong. On the stage, Vice Principal Ling stroked his beard and gave a chilly croon as his gaze towards Bairuoqi turned extremely unfriendly. Humph! Those who try to angle for fame is someone that I despise. The position she is sitting in is probably only 30% of the pressure that the others are handling, and she is not going to make it any further. This only means that her willpower is way below par. With a niece like her, Bai Lu Feng has really thrown his face away. How'd he teach her? She's after all only a niece. Perhaps Bai Lu Feng didn't really taught her anything. Ignore her. I saw that Bai Ruol really looks like she's doing well. You can also listen on. Upon hearing those words, the few elders' gazes fell onto Huang Yueli. At this moment, the total number of people left in the array were merely 10 over people. But among these 10 over people, everyone's performance and situation were totally different. For people like Lu Zicheng, they were on the verge of collapse. From their tightly creased brows and sweat-soaked shirt, it was obvious to tell how much pressure they were under right now. For them to be able to stay in the array perfectly all right with no signs of ejections only meant one thing. They absolutely had firm determination and willpower and had used all their energy to surpass their own limits. However, Song Yar's expression was totally different. Her face flushed slightly, and it was obvious that she was starting to feel the pressure. But this pressure to her evidently had not affected her too seriously. Her waist was still upright, and the lotus position which she sat was very standard. It was evident that even if the intensity of the pressure had increased by a notch to 5th stage realms practitioner's intensity, she would have a chance to last some time. Compared to Song Yaru, Huang Yueli's performance wasn't that well at all. Her forehead was starting to turn sweaty as her brows were tightly knitted together. Her face flushed a weird shade of red. It was clear that she was under a huge amount of pressure. And not bad. This little lass had completed the previous 2 stages easily, and now she had persisted until the very last 10 over people. From her condition, although she cannot be compared to Song Yaru, but compared the other 10 over people, she is much better. She should be able to obtain number 2 in this round of assessment. Vice Principal Ling concluded. The others nodded their heads in agreement. That's right. But what a pity, seeing that she had completed the first 2 rounds so smoothly. I had thought that she might be able to surpass Song Yaru. But from the looks of it now, it seems that she's still lacking just that little bit. It's unfair when you put it in that way. Elder who said, this Bairuoli is the youngest here. Only 14 this year, and Song Yaru is already 16. Just based on that lass's power of understanding and innate talent. In just 2 years' time, surpassing Song Yaru is a matter of putting the nail onto the board. Now, she merely lost in terms of age. You're right. In this way, we should put more resources into nurturing this lass. But what we don't know is the relationship between her and Bai Lu Feng. It's easy to find out, isn't it? Just get her over and ask, and the truth will be revealed. All of them talked cheerfully and wittily as they thought that today's assessment was coming to an end. Except for Song Yaru, the rest would not be able to last beyond the burning of an incense stick. Only Song Yaru was slightly better, but just after a quarter of an hour, the array, unleashing the profound energy, would hit a 5th stage realm practitioner's intensity, and even she was not possible to last that long. So at the most, after a quarter of an hour, the assessment would definitely end. But just at this moment, Tang Jinhua's eyes swept towards the array, and after a sudden blank, he suddenly called out. That's strange. What's going on? What's the matter? That lass. Why did she suddenly stand up in the array? What? You must have seen wrongly? Stand up? The few of them turned their heads to take a look in disbelief. Just one look, and it had given them a big scare. Huang Yuli had really stood up, and moreover, after stopping for 2 breaths of time at the current spot, she started moving again. You can also listen on. What trickery is she playing? Why did she stand up in the middle of the array? This isn't the point, right? The main point is, how is it possible for her to stand up? I cannot understand these 2 questions. In reality, they had never seen anyone who could stand up in the array in the middle of the assessment. Once everyone had selected a position, they would not move around anymore. Moreover, the pressure at the beginning was rather weak, so moving around was still possible, but with increasing pressure, to even sit properly at the original position already utilized the entire body's profound energy to resist against the coercion from the outer world. At this point in time, even if one wanted to stand up, the spirit was willing, but the flesh was weak, so it's just impossible to do so. Because of this reason, seeing Huang Yuli standing up made everyone surprised. However, this was not the most shocking matter. After Huang Yuli stood up, she walked directly towards the center of the array. Her footsteps were not very stable, and her breathing was rather coarse, looking as though she was on the verge of falling any moment. When everyone saw her, they secretly broke out into cold sweat on her behalf. But she went against expectations, and not only did she not fall, she walked right into the core area of the array. Heavens, what on earth is she trying to do? Tang Jinghua asked with his eyes wide. Realizing that he totally didn't understand what she was trying to do, the center area of the array's pressure is 10 times stronger than the surroundings. Has her brain gone into convulsion? She actually dared to walk right into the center area? What on earth is she trying to do? Is she not intending to take part in the assessment anymore? Once she reaches the center area, she will not be able to last longer than 1 breath of timing and will be ejected immediately. What does this mean? Is she looking to torture herself? Not only those on the stage had noticed, even those examinees on the public square had already noticed this abnormal scene. Hey, isn't that Bairuoli from South U Kingdom? What is she trying to do? Could it be that the center area's pressure is much weaker? I'm not sure, but she could actually stand up. Earlier under that pressure, I couldn't move an inch at all. Heavens, she's not taking part in the assessment properly. What is she thinking of? It was unfortunate that no one would ever understand what Huang Yuli was thinking about. When she had just entered the array for the assessment, she had actually made up her mind. She was a 9-stage realm expert in her previous life, and although after her rebirth, her soul was weaker, but as compared to normal practitioners, her willpower was absolutely shocking. Pressure from 8-stage realm and below were not able to cause any impact on her. So this round of assessment did not pose any difficulty to her. However long she wanted to persist, she would be able to do so. But in this round, she had actually intended to handle it just like the previous 2 rounds. When there's only 10 over people left, she would actively smash her number plate and be ejected. To be able to get a ranking of 10 or more place wasn't too high or too low, which was just nice. After the assessment had started, the others used their might to suppress the surroundings' powerful pressure. Only Huang Yuli casually chose a place to sit down, and if it wasn't for the fact that the disturbance wasn't good, she was prepared to find a stone to lean against and sleep for a while. From the beginning, everything was normal, but following the increasing intensity of the profound energy, when the pressure had reached the level of 4th-stage realm, she suddenly felt her sharp pain in her chest. A strange, restless feeling was emitted from her dantian. You can also listen on. The fire attributed profound energy within her suddenly became chaotic and impetuous and kept colliding around in her dantian. Initially, Huang Yuli didn't think much of it. She only thought that her state of mind wasn't very good, as she had underestimated Celestial Light Academy's array, which affected her internal profound energy and caused it to be agitated. She corrected her mindset and straightened her back as she displayed the standard cross-legged meditation posture and, at the same time, activated the 9 Phoenix Transformations cultivation method. However, things were quite different from what she had imagined. The rampaging, profound energy within her did not stop, but instead, the fluctuations became more and more intense. It got so intense that a large amount of sweat started to trickle down her forehead as her face started to flush red, as though she was not going to make it any longer. The situation looked very unfavorable, but in Huang Yueli's eyes, a sense of joy flashed past. The reason was because Huang Yueli had already understood the unusual fluctuations of her profound energy was not because that she was unable to take the pressure from the profound energy by the array, but because this was the sign that she was about to advance. When Huang Yueli had advanced to second stage realm more than a month ago in South Yu Kingdom, the amount of profound energy had accumulated within her body and allowed her to break through directly to second stage realm 9 level. However, due to the limitations of the flame spirit physique, she had reached a bottleneck and had been unable to advance to third stage realm directly. Instead, she had stopped at second stage realm 9 level. According to 9 Phoenix Transformations, hence, it was necessary to collect a large amount of medicinal herbs, magical beast cores, and spirit jades before she could continue to advance. She was already very familiar with this pathway. Previous 2 times, she had tried various sorts of methods, but yet was still unable to advance. Only when she followed 9 Phoenix Transformations cultivation method as recorded, then would she be able to break through the bottleneck. Which was why Huang Yueli totally didn't expect that she could. Actually, under the condition that she had not collected all the medicinal herbs and under such a location. To suddenly advance? What on earth was this? Huang Yueli's mind raced as fast as a lightning firestone, where a bold guess suddenly came to her mind in an instant. This time after she had advanced, not too long later, an accident had happened as Zhua Fangping pursued for her life, as she got seriously injured. At that time, the profound energy in her body had totally been used up, and even her meridians had been damaged to a certain degree. Subsequently, to save her, Liu Baiyan let her soaked in medicinal baths for 7 days. Huang Yueli's medical knowledge was very limited as she was unable to find out clearly what bath had Liu Baiyan soaked her in and what were the requirements. She could only subtly felt that Liu Baiyan had used all fire-attributed medicinal herbs and unknowingly, and had used a type of deviant flame, heartwood spirit flame, to heat up the medicinal bath. Thinking back now, that medicinal bath was very exquisite. She gauged that the medicinal herbs and proportions were similar to the 9 Phoenix Transformations. With a certain degree of duplicity, it had caused a certain effect to her flame fire physique. Including the fact that she was already on her last breath, it could be said that it was a blessing in disguise. In the art of cultivation, to break then, to establish, could bring about several folds of effect out. Huang Yueli's luck apparently wasn't too bad. The medicinal effect from that medicinal bath had been accumulating in her body, pushing her to the verge of advancement. The only thing was Liu Baiyan's prescription wasn't as effective as 9 Phoenix Transformations, so Huang Yueli could only go nearer to advancement but had not immediately achieved the response. You can also listen on. However, the medicinal effect had laid in the dormant state, waiting for an opportunity where she could perfectly break through. And now, the opportunity had appeared. Within Celestial Light Academy's array was an increasing coercion of profound energy which kept pressurizing Huang Yueli. The profound energy in her dantian was led by the pressure from the outside world and started to stir. As the intensity of the pressure got stronger, the effect on her profound energy became more obvious. When the pressure in the outside world had increased to 4-stage realm, she could clearly feel that the profound energy within was continuously trying to break through the bottleneck, struggling, clamoring, as though it was about to break out at the very next moment. There was no other possibility about this feeling. She was going to advance. This matter had happened so suddenly, completely out of her expectations. But Huang Yuli was very clear that if she missed this sudden opportunity to break through, then it would be very difficult for her to meet with another. To her, the wisest choice was to take full use of this opportunity and in a spurt of energy break through to the third stage realm. Huang Yuli had decided on the spot and started to initiate the cultivation method to attack the meridians in her body to seek a breakthrough. But the profound energy had rotated a few rounds, and after several rounds of trying to break through the bottleneck, several times, it was just that little bit before she succeeded, but eventually she was still unable to advance successfully. This feeling was akin to a drowning person and had already seen the surface, but as he tried his best to move forward, but no matter how much he tried, he didn't have enough energy to swim to the shore. This feeling was extremely unnerving. Huang Yuli was experienced and had already analyzed where the problem lay. The intensity of the array was still not enough, which made her fall short of success. She needed even more profound energy to attack the bottleneck and needed stronger pressure to agitate her meridians and dantian. The intensity of the array right now was not enough, simply not enough. Huang Yuli was unable to wait for the intensity of the array to slowly increase and decided immediately to stand up. She knew the array eye's position was where the pressure was the strongest, so she had to make her way there. Huang Yuli stood up shakily as she proceeded towards the center area of the array. In actual fact, to resist against the pressure itself was no difficulty to her, but with the profound energy in her body banging against her dantian with no way of suppression. The feeling was extremely uncomfortable, and that led her face to flush as her sweat beads kept sprouting. At the moment when she walked towards the center area, she unavoidably walked past Bai Ruo Qi. Bai Ruo Qi's current predicament was extremely bad. Even though she had cheated and chosen a position with the least pressure, but as her cultivation was way below the other people, at this moment, she was unable to persist any further. Bai Ruo Qi was unable to see how many people were left in the array, but she could more or less feel it and knew that the array didn't have much people left. So if she were to give up at this point of time, she would probably get rather good results. She didn't want to persist any further and retrieve her number plate from her sleeve. However, just at the moment she smashed her number plate, she suddenly heard footsteps coming from behind her. Why would there be footsteps in this array? For that one moment, Bai Ruo Qi, though, that she was having hallucinations. But these footsteps were very light but very stable. Slowly walking towards her direction, until it had brushed past her. Bai Ruo Qi forcefully opened her eyes as she turned around to take a look. You can also listen on. Under Bai Ruo Qi's blurry gaze, she seemed to have seen a white figure, which she found extremely familiar. How could it be her? Bai Ruo Qi thought that she was going insane. Huang Yuli had always been on the boundary of the array, and she had seen it with her own eyes. Moreover, Bai Ruo Qi had thought that she understood her third sister's cultivation very well. When they were in South Yu Kingdom, she had just broke through to second stage realm not long before, and following that with her serious injury, she probably cannot even be compared to a normal second stage realm first level practitioner. Now that the pressure had already reached fourth stage realm's intensity, and Huang Yuli was not like her hiding at a blind spot, where the array effect was at its weakest, so by right this wretched lass should not be able to last that long. So how was it possible that she was still in the array? Moreover, she was still continuing to move towards the center area. This was just an impossible thing. At this crucial juncture, to be able to last more than a breath's timing was already very difficult. Who on earth would take things so hard and move towards the position where the pressure was at its strongest? But no matter how much disbeliefs Bai Ruo Qi had, Huang Yuli's figure was already swaying right before her eyes. Besides that, Huang Yuli was really walking to the center of the area where the coercion was the most powerful, where the pressure was the largest at the array eye position. Bai Ruo Qi almost screamed out in shock. She stared wide-eyed, watching Huang Yuli settling down at the array eye, and as she sat cross-legged, her sight congealed, slightly striking out a standard posture for meditation cultivation. The minute Bai Ruo Qi opened her mouth, suddenly the intensity of the array lifted yet another level. She was unable to resist any further, as she could only see black, and her mind went into a state of dizziness. By the time she regained her senses, she was already ejected to the outside of the array. Bai Ruo Qi rested for a little while, and when she regained her senses, she could only feel her entire body covered in sweat. Earlier at that instant, when the intensity had once again increased, it had already reached a fourth-stage realm, third-level practitioner's profound energy intensity. This strong pressure was enough to make her feel extremely awful. At that moment when she was ejected, she almost threw up. Bai Ruo Qi held her chest as she looked at her surroundings. The public square was filled with examinees who were ejected from the array, and there was really no sight of Huang Yueli here. That wretched lass was really still inside. Could be it that the figure which she saw earlier was really her? How could that be possible? When she was ejected, she herself had already felt so awful that she felt like dying. If that wretched lass was really still in the array and in the center position of it, just how strong was the pressure there? This was certainly not something which a second-stage practitioner could handle. However, as every minute and second passed by, another 3 to 4 people were ejected, and within this group of people, there was still no sight of Huang Yueli. There were a few people whispering in discussion from behind. That Bai Ruoli from South Yu Kingdom is still inside, and have yet to come out. She is actually able to take such a huge pressure. The intensity in the array should have at least reached 4th stage, 5th level already. How is she able to handle it? I saw it earlier that she stood up from the boundary of the array and walked towards the center area. What? Isn't the pressure in the inner portion of the array much higher? She still dared to walk toward the inside? That may not be necessary. We're only guessing that the pressure on the inside is much higher. But in actual fact, it may not be true. You can also listen on. Then where is she right now? No idea. The range of this array is just too big. With us standing on the outside, we're not able to see what's the situation in the center of the array. Otherwise, I'd also like to see what's her situation right now. The crowd started to discuss at the outside of the array, but could only make wild guesses. Originally, everyone's main point of concern was the number 1 genius on Yaru. But unconsciously, the center of discussion slowly focused on a Huang Yueli. Her performance was simply too outstanding and simply too abnormal. The intensity of the array had already increased to a limitation which could make anyone devastated, but not only had she persisted, she had actually walked right into the center of the array. Another quarter of an hour went past again, and there were only a few practitioners left in the array as they consecutively were ejected outwards. The anti-penultimate person to fail was Lu Zicheng. When he was ejected, his face was shockingly pale, no difference from a corpse. He had given all he had got, even his family's Kabbalah, risking his life to obtain a good result in this round. When he was ejected, the array's pressure had reached a 5th stage realm's intensity. Lu Zicheng thought that his performance was extremely good as he was self-contentedly struck up a conversation with a few examined whom he was familiar with. How was it? How long did I persist in this round? I said long ago that this assessment of willpower is my speciality, and I will definitely be able to crush the crowd. Young Master Lu, you're just too strong. The difficulty of this round of assessment is so high, and yet you are still able to get into the top 3. You're really... Before his companions could finish their flattering, Lu Zicheng's face fell. Top 3? You mean to say I'm ranked 3rd? Besides Song Yaru, who else is still in the array? This is not possible? Xuejing Chuan, Fatty from Wang family, Sitiu. Aren't they all ejected already? Lu Zicheng enumerated the renowned talents of their generation in Sky Cloud City, and without any exception, these people had already been ejected out of the array and had been eliminated. As for the remaining few, he simply could not recall who else was stronger than him. It's Bai Ruoli from South Yu Kingdom. What? That lass from the small countryside? How could it be her? This absolutely cannot be true. Lu Zicheng's eyes turned wide, as though he was unable to handle this blow that he had lost to a practitioner from a small place. But at the next moment, something made him even more astonished had happened. Another human silhouette was ejected from the array as that slender figure glided in the sky, falling on the side of the array. That Byroli had finally came out. Her willpower is actually so outstanding. If it wasn't for Sky Cloud City's genius Song Yaru, then the words had stopped abruptly as that person was dumbstruck. Hey, what's wrong with you? His companion beside him felt something was amiss as he ushered him. That he didn't regain his senses for quite a while. That what? His companion impatiently turned his head around, and following his gaze, and at the next moment, he too turned petrified. The person who was ejected was Song Yaru. Then how about Byroli? Surely it was impossible for her to be more powerful than Song Yaru. Since she isn't out yet, could it be that she had died inside? Everyone started discussions, making wild guesses that Huang Yueli had probably gotten into an accident. Otherwise, there was no explanation on why the talented young lady Song Yaru, which her family had groomed so carefully, was not able to be compared to her. Even the examiner felt that something was amiss and worried that something had really happened. So he sent someone to ask for further instructions from Vice Principal Ling to pre-terminate the assessment and enter the array to rescue her. You can also listen on. But Vice Principal Ling's reply was, "You're not allowed to terminate the assessment. Just proceed as per normal, and no matter how much time is needed, let that lass inside smash her own number plate to wait for her to be ejected." The examiner was filled with suspicions, and he really wanted to say that since that lass inside was possibly the top 10 examinees in this assessment, so she's considered as a talent as well. It would be a waste if she really died. But he was unable to rebuke the vice principal. In actual face, those few who were sitting on the stage could see much more than those below. Moreover, their gazes were all filled with acrimony and incisiveness. Huang Yueli's situation in the array had long entered their minds, and very quickly they made a judgment. From the obvious external fluctuations of her profound energy, this lass, surely she wasn't going to advance here, right? To be able to advance in the middle of the examinations, she is really an outstanding genius. Not only is her power of comprehension shocking, moreover, and had an exceeding psychological mentality. This lass has a bright future ahead of her. The crowd exclaimed in admiration as they set their sights focused on a Huang Yueli. At the present moment, Huang Yueli had already broke out in deep sweat. When she reached the center area and steadied her sitting position, she started to initiate her cultivation method. From the inside towards the outside, the profound energy within her body viciously collided against her dantian and meridians, whereas the array's profound energy kept coercing her, pressurizing her from the outside to the inside. Two powerful energies kept fighting against each other, as though it was trying to tear her entire body's meridians apart entirely. Intense pain followed closely as it seeped into every inch of her bone marrow, so intense that it was enough to make anyone die on the spot. But this pain made Huang Yueli overjoyed, because this represented that she was about to advance immediately. Very soon, the lacerating pain kept rising, and after it reached a peak, it completely spread apart. Intensive and overbearing, yet scorching and rampaging fire, attributed energy passed through her body. The pressure from the profound energy surrounding Huang Yueli had been completely suppressed at this moment, as the entire array's fire attributed energy were all absorbing towards her as a center of attraction. This absorption speed was extremely fast, as the atmosphere in the array could be seen visibly to a certain extent as it twisted. Very quickly, the fire-attributed profound energy had been stripped completely by her. This bit of energy for her was not enough. In this way, she could only continue to absorb the energy from the vast space outside of the array, but in this way, the balance of the array would be completely destroyed, and the entire array was on the verge of collapse. The examinees outside the array had all gone into a blank as they stared wide-eyed and turned tongue-tied, watching the strange phenomenon appearing right before their eyes. That array, which had bounded so many of them, torturing every single one of them to their last breath, was vibrating violently at this very moment. Blinding blue rays kept flashing past on the outer area of the array as the array patterns was visibly appearing. On the center top portion of the array in the sky appeared a large red-colored cloud, several meters in length, like a ball of raging fire suspending over the crowd. This was the physical state of a congealed fire, attributed profound energy. At this moment, this red cloud was continuously attacking the top portion of the array as though it was trying to dash into the array's inner area. Those on the stage could no longer sit still as one after another. They subconsciously stood up from their seats. Everyone's sight were dead set on the stage below as they concentrated on the petite figure in the array. You can also listen on. Impressive. So impressive. From the abnormality of the heavens and earth, it looks like this lass is going to break through not a small level, but a large realm. Right? Only when there's an upgrade of realm would there be such obvious changes in the profound energy. This lass had already a second stage realm's power, so that is to say, she's now trying to break through to third stage realm. When Tang Jinhua said these, he felt that his voice was quivering. This matter had gone way beyond his imagination. This lass looked like she wasn't even 15 yet, but she was already going to break through to third stage realm even before she had reached the marriageable age. What kind of innate talent was that? Even if it was Celeste light sex geniuses under various resources, not many were able to advance so quickly. As for this lass, she grew up in a small place like South Yu Kingdom. This innate talent, even by Lu Feng at that year, wasn't comparable to her. However, when Vice Principal Ling heard these, he shook his head. Look at the large red cloud above her head. The boundary is so huge. When normal practitioners break through to third stage realm, they could never achieve this might. Not only is she going to advance to third stage realm, after her advancement, her power is probably extraordinary. We had never expected that in this batch of students, the Celestial Light Academy was actually able to attract such a peerless talent. At this moment, Huang Yueli had almost lost her consciousness. She could no longer feel the changes in the outer world or even hear any sounds. All her senses were kept within her body, and all her profound energy were concentrated in her dantian. Under the oppression of the profound energies, the continuous rejections, oppression followed by rejection again, it resembled a heart's rhythm, contracting and expanding. Suddenly, Huang Yueli slowly opened her eyes as the red cloud above her head continued to attack the top of the array. She stretched out her finger and struck a hand sign towards the array's eye, and the array instantly disappeared. A large amount of fire attributed profound energy rushed down from the sky and gushed into her body. Huang Yueli seemed unable to take such a huge strike and immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. At this moment, the profound energy crashing within her body suddenly restrained itself towards her dantian and subsequently grew smaller and smaller, gradually turning into a light spot floating on the top of her dantian. Following the formation of the light spot, the rampaging profound energy in her body slowly settled down. Huang Yueli grew delightful as she knew she had already advanced successfully to become a third stage practitioner. The light spot in her body was the mark of a third stage practitioner, spirit embryonic form. Because the profound energy in her dantian had formed into a spiritual form, so the profound energy in her body could attach itself to the spirit. No matter if it was the pureness of the profound energy or the storage of the amount of profound energy, there was a sharp rise. As the third stage realm was also the spirit profound realm, compared to second stage's defensive profound realm practitioners, the leap in the difference of the power could not be out on the same level. Profound energy was still on the rise, expanding, moving upscale. Now, long after she had advanced to third stage first level, she advanced to third stage second level, and immediately after that, third stage third level. However, just as she had broken through to third stage third level, the speed of the increasing profound energy suddenly slowed down. After that, it grew slower and slower. Just on the verge of breaking through to third stage fourth level, it suddenly came to a halt. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli's eyebrows rose in surprise. This situation had never happened before. Previously, whenever she broke through the flame spirit physique's shackles and advanced, she was always able to raise to an entire large realm. The first time she advanced from an ordinary person to first stage realm 9 level. Second time was from first stage 9 level entering to second stage realm 9 level. But now, she was not able to advance directly to third stage realm 9 level, but had stopped at third stage realm 3rd level. She attempted to initiate 9 Phoenix transformations, cultivation method, to absorb the fire attributed profound energy from heaven and earth, but all the surrounding profound energy had already been drawn totally by her. So at that moment, only sparse energy was collected. Besides that, she felt that her body had hit a bottleneck. Within this short period, it would be difficult to continue upgrading to another level at one go. Huang Yueli was disappointed, but after thinking, she felt that it was understandable. Her advancement this round was an accident. Under the double effects of Liu Bian's medicinal bath and Celestial Light Academy's array, the breaking and establishing rebound effect was her coincidental advancement to the third stage realm. But this situation was obviously not perfect. According to 9 Phoenix transformations, recorded requirements, the standard operation was definitely not the same. So, some flaws were to be expected. Looked like she could not afford to be lazy this time if she wanted to perfect the 9 transformation in 9 Phoenix transformations. Then she would need to collect all the medicinal herbs recorded and find a suitable timing to go in a closed-door cultivation before she could fill in the remaining portions to make it complete. As for now, she could only accept this imperfect ending. Huang Yueli kept her frustrations away as she slowly walked out of the array boundary. Outside the array, plenty of people were waiting for her appearance, as the gazes all held different emotions. Some were envious, shocked, jealous, unreconciled, but above all and without exception, there was a sense of reverence hidden in the innermost part of the heart. It was because when the fire cloud appeared earlier, the examiner carelessly slipped his mouth. Heavens, this is the sign of breaking through to third stage realm. This last, she's about to break through to third stage realm. This is simply a miracle. Third stage realm. She was actually going to break through to third stage realm. At that moment, even the cold and aloof Song Yaru, who felt that she was a cut above the others, was also dealt with a huge blow as her expression turned extremely ugly. This young lass from the small country didn't look very outstanding. Even though her results in the previous 2 rounds were still alright. But as compared to her, the cream of the crop, she could not be comparable at all. Why did she suddenly become so strong? Not only had she crushed herself in the 3rd round of assessment, she also managed to advance in the middle of the assessment. Third stage realm. This was third stage realm. Even Song Yaru herself felt that it was impossible for her to break through to third stage realm before she was 17. But this 14-year-old lass had actually did it. Under the complicated gaze of the crowd, Huang Yueli didn't make any noise and quietly walked to her original position. She had originally not intended to show off, but now that it's already clear for all to see, then it was really nothing at all. The crowd's investigative glares could not affect her any single bit. Huang Yueli turned her slights onto the examiner and said, "Mr. Examiner, I should be the last one to leave the array, right? Now that the 3rd round of assessment should have come to an end, please announce the results of the assessment." You can also listen on. The examiner recovered from his shock when he heard what she said, as he remembered his duty. "Oh, right, the assessment results. The 3rd round of the assessment results are out, and your performance have exceeded my expectations. Especially by Rooli, who had persisted in the array for an entire 4 hours. she had already broken our academy's entrance examinations record. With this comes your ranking after consolidating the 3 rounds of assessment marks. The examiner directed some people to post the results on the ranking board. Without a doubt, Huang Yueli had directly rose to the first place, while Song Yaru could only settle for second place. This ranking was not the least bit apprehensive, and no matter how unresigned Song Yaru felt, she could only accept this result. Bai Ruo Qi stared at the ranking board and saw her own ranking rose to the 20th place as she let out a smile. Although Huang Yueli actually advanced during the middle of the assessment, and she even advanced to 3rd stage realm, which made her gnash her teeth with hatred almost to the point of fainting on the spot. But at the very least, she had successfully enrolled into Celestial Light Academy. As long as she could enter this number 1 school in South Sky region, when she was going to learn the cultivation methods in future, she would be able to enjoy various resources, and she would be able to raise her cultivation by several levels. Perhaps she might even surpass Huang Yueli one day. With this, I hereby announce the name list for those who have been officially enrolled. Wait a minute. An elderly voice cut into the examiner's words. Vice Principal Ling led the few management staff on the stage and walked slowly to the public square. The examiner cried out in shock as he hurriedly rushed over to welcome them. The examinees on the public square began discussing in whispers, although they didn't recognize the others. But Vice Principal Ling had announced the assessment rewards earlier, so everyone knew who he was. The vigor of the few elders beside him were comparable to Vice Principal Ling, so they were definitely important people in the academy as well. Why did they all appear here suddenly? Had the assessments all been completed? Vice Principal Ling lowered his head, told the examiner something, and passed him a slip of paper. The examiner nodded his head as he walked to the front of the stage. Vice Principal Ling had personally verified this assessment's enrollment name list. Everyone please remain silent and listen to the announcement of the result. At that instant, everyone quietened down. The first place of this time's examinations is by Ruoli, who is from South Yu Kingdom. She will be getting the following rewards for the first place. 1 piece of 4th tier lower grade profound armament, 20,000 medium grade spirit stones, and besides that, 100 star coins. Other than that, due to Bairuoli's outstanding performance, Vice Principal Ling decided to make an exception and enroll her directly as a core student. Once it was announced, a hustle of bustling stirred. Song Yaru, too, enviously looked towards Huang Yueli. Celestial Light Academy's regulations was newly enrolled students could only start from an ordinary student. At most, they would be given a prospective core student qualification and would enjoy some extra resources. But to officially enroll as a core student, they would need to wait until the first semester's examinations. The last person who had broken the exception to be upgraded to a core student was Celestial Light Academy's famous number 1 talent, by Lu Feng. Now that this little lass had gotten the same kind of treatment, it really made others envious and jealous. Second place is Song Family's Song Yaru. The rewards that she will be getting is, as expected, Song Yaru was not accepted directly as a core student, but was only given a prospected core student quota. Third place. Very soon, the 100 examinees who had been recruited was announced. Those who were recruited were delighted, while those who had been eliminated were filled with despair, an obvious difference. Bai Ruo Qi was the only one who had a blank look, because she discovered that she actually didn't hear her own name. You can also listen on. What on earth was going on? Looking at her surroundings were either overjoyed or disappointed people. As for Bai Ruo Qi, besides uncertainty, there was still only uncertainty. She had already been recruited, wasn't it? She was one of the top-ranking examinees in all 3 rounds, and after the last round, she had even managed to be ranked 20th. Celestial Light Academy's enrollment examinations had always been fair, and with her ranking, it was impossible to be eliminated. But why didn't she hear her own name? Bai Ruo Qi was at a loss for a moment when she suddenly thought of a possibility. That was right. Earlier, when the first round of assessment had ended, the examiner had already announced that she was pre-selected and even gave her a quota for prospective core student. So that probably meant that she didn't occupy a quota among the 100 new students, which was why her name wasn't called out. So she was actually pre-selected. Right, that should be it. The examiner only gave the examinees a very short amount of time before he hastily continued. Now that the assessment results have been announced, those practitioners who had not been recruited, please leave Celestial Light Academy immediately. As for those who had been recruited, congratulations to all of you. From now onwards, you're a member of the Celestial Light Academy. Later on, an upper-class student will drop by and show you around the school grounds, followed by bringing you to where you will be staying. Will the new students who have been recruited please line up according to your examination number plates and follow me over here? After the examiner completed his words, he walked towards the inner zone of the academy. Those new students who were lucky to be selected recollected their senses from their delightfulness and hastily ran over. As for those who were eliminated, no matter how unreconciled they were, they didn't dare to be persistent as they drooped their heads and prepared to leave. Bai Ruo Qi looked left and right and joined the new students' team. The examiner stopped in his footsteps as he tallied the total number of people when he suddenly frowned. What's the situation now? Why is there one more person? I've made myself very clear earlier. The examinee who had not been selected must leave Celestial Light Academy immediately. Why is there someone who still lingered around and refused to leave? I'm giving you one last warning. If you don't leave now, then I'll treat the case as intentionally creating problem. After the examiner completed his sentence, he paused, but no one left on their own accord. This time, even those new students were amazed. What kind of place was Celestial Light Academy? There's actually someone who tried to bluff their way through. What was stored in their brain? Isn't that person's guts just a little too big? Bai Ruo Qi was sneering in her heart. There's someone who is so pig-headed. The examiner had already said it till this, and that person still refused to leave. She really wanted to see how this person can fake his death through. The examiner's brows creased as he commanded, "Everyone take out your number plates, and let's verify the total." Bai Ruo Qi had never considered that the person who should be chased out was in fact herself. Very calmly, she took out her number plate. The examiner checked the number plates one by one, and when he swept past Bai Ruo Qi's number plate, his face immediately sunk. "So it's you. Number 63 Bai Ruo Qi. How dare you not listen to orders and leave Celestial Light Academy? What are you trying to do? What place do you think Celestial Light Academy is? All unrelated people are not permitted to enter the academy grounds." Bai Ruo Qi was showered down by a scolding as she went into a daze. She blankly stood on her original spot, and after a while, she regained her senses. Mr. Examiner, you're mistaken. I am one of those who had been pre-selected, not someone who is unrelated." The examiner replied coldly, "Really? But I don't recall seeing your name on the enrollment name list." You can also listen on. Bai Ruo Qi hurriedly explained, "Mr. Examiner, have you forgotten? Earlier, when the first round of assessment had ended, you announced that I had been pre-selected. Moreover, I was given the prospective core quota. Please try to recall." The examiner replied, "When I was announcing the results, I have already mentioned this. The names which I called out on the enrollment name list after all the assessments have ended was the most accurate. Sign your name was not there. You had been eliminated. Hurry and leave now." Bai Ruo Qi's eyes turned wide with surprise, showing a look of disbelief. How is that possible? You must be mistaken. I had really been selected earlier. Everyone heard that, right? The name list must have left my name out. Moreover, if I wasn't pre-selected, my ranking is 20th, so surely I'd be in the recruitment name list, right? Bai Ruo Qi's defense had lured the other new examinees to quietly discuss this issue. "That's right, I recall now. This South U Kingdom's Bai Ruo Qi earlier was indeed pre-selected, right? And she is ranked rather forward. Isn't it said that Celestial Light Academy's recruitment name list are strictly selected based on the total points ranking? How come she isn't selected?" "That's right. Could it be that she was really left out by mistake?" Hearing the crowd's discussions, Bai Ruo Qi felt that her confidence rising and facing the examiner once again, her tone held some senses of interrogation. "Mr. Examiner, I heard that Celestial Light Academy's assessments have always been the fairest and not operated underhandedly. Then I like to ask, why is it that I'm ranked top 20, but I'm not recruited? Is it because you didn't do your job properly and left me out or think I'm from small country, so I could be bullied and intentionally remove my name? Bai Ruo Qi felt she was justified and thought that she knew quite a number of people during the past few days at Celestial Light Academy. So many high-level practitioners had to give her uncle face, so she was so pleased that she momentarily lost her sense of measure and spoke in a blunt manner to the examiner. When the examiner heard her words, his expression turned extremely ugly. The usual core students in the academy were very polite to teachers, but what was this lass? Not only was she from a small country, her innate talent was only fourth lower grade talent. So what qualifications did she have to make a fuss here? Your guts is really not small. Seems like you'd have to see the coffin before you knew how to shed tears. The examiner said gloomily, originally, I had given senior by Lu Feng's face to leave you some reputation, not exposing you and let you leave the academy quietly. But from the looks of it, you don't seem to know where you're wrong, and you don't intend to save some pride for yourself. Bai Ruo Qi went into a blank as her heart missed a beat. She subconsciously became flustered. Could it be that her attempt at cheating in the examinations had been discovered? But this thought only flashed by for a moment before it was thrown out of her mind. No, it was impossible. How could it be discovered? The person who had leaked out the questions to her was some high-ranking educator in Celestial Light Academy. Moreover, she had followed regulations in the few rounds of assessment and had done it ingeniously, so since there wasn't any obvious violation, who was able to see through it. Thinking to this point, she straightened her spine as she spoke confidently. Mr. Examiner, I don't understand what you mean. All that I've done are prim and proper, and I've never done anything underhanded. How can you think in this way and just pin a crime onto me like this? You can also listen on. The examiner was infuriated to the point of laughter. You still dare to deny? You really think everyone is a fool? You have cheated in all 3 rounds of enrollment examinations, and with undeniable evidence, you still dare to say that you had obtained high marks but not been selected? Still dare to complain that Celestial Light Academy's assessment is unfair? If we were to recruit you, then it would really be unfair to the other examinees. The minute he completed his sentence, the crowd went into an uproar. Cheated? Bai Ruo Qi cheated? No wonder a practitioner from a small country like her had not much innate talent, cultivation methods, or profound skills, but she was still among to be ranked in the top 20. I had suspected something was amiss long ago. But which part did she cheated in? I couldn't tell at all. Is this real? Although her results are indeed a little exaggerated. But to say she cheated, there must be evidence, and they cannot just anyhow frame a good person, right? The topic of cheating was simply too sensitive, and from that moment onwards, the looks on by Ruo Qi had changed. As a practitioner, they were very particular about being just and upright as they pursued the extreme boundary of martial arts. For someone who deviated from the correct pathway and cheated was despised by everyone. Moreover, to cheat in the examinations would affect the interests of everyone else. In the midst of the noise, Huang Yueli didn't take part in it. Her lips curled up, slightly revealing a calm smile, but she didn't say anything. When Bai Ruo Qi heard the examiner's words, it felt like a pail of ice-cold water showering down on her head, making her feel cold to the max from top to toe. Cheated in all 3 rounds of assessment. Undeniable evidence. The words kept reverberating around in her head, making her discomposed. Could it be that Celestial Light Academy had really found evidence of her cheating in the examinations? What was this possible? She had obviously been commended in the first round of assessment. From the first to the 3rd round of assessment, her name was in the ranking list, and if they had discovered that she cheated earlier, should they chase her out immediately? Why would they allow her to complete all 3 rounds of assessment? Bai Ruo thought it through, but she couldn't get an answer. The examiner stared at her through his icy cold eyes and continued speaking. The first round was to test your control of strength and technique. The most difficult part was how to distribute your strength in the most suitable way within a short period of time and with only one chance. Other than you, even though the others understood the complexity of the assessment content, they were unable to find the best-case solution immediately. When Bairuo Qi heard this, she knew trouble was brewing. Celestial Light Academy's staff were really sharp-eyed and saw through her problem. Only thing was this groundless evidence was not enough to convict her. Bairuo Qi tried her best to stabilize herself as she found a reason to retort. Why do you feel that I cannot find the best-case solution? This thinking just suddenly popped into my mind, can it? The examiner replied coldly. If you must insist on explaining in this way, it's fine. This round, we'll just consider your power of understanding as overwhelming, and you are inborn with an ability to analyze things. He hastily continued. Then in the second round of assessment, you're the first one to discover the relationship between the attack intensity and speed while passing through the steel cable. May I ask, how did you discover this regulation? I just saw through it, can I? Bairuo Qi hemmed and hawed as she replied. Oh, saw through it? Did you know that the steel cable was embedded with an array patterns of 4th tier and above so that it could activate such strong intensity attack power? What do you have to be able to see through it at one look? You can also listen on. Bairuo Qi was overwhelmed by the consecutive questions as she turned dumbstruck. But she barely found a reason. I don't know. My instincts told me that there was a problem with the steel cable. And moreover, my cultivation is really not there yet, and I'm timid so I don't dare to cross. I had never expected that the arrow's attack intensity would weaken, and I was only guessing. Her denial was simply shameless. Anyway, she had already stuck to her own statement that she didn't know anything at all. As for why she coincidentally got such high marks, that was akin to a blind cat catching dead mouse. Pure luck. Luck was considered as part of a practitioner's ability, so who could say that one's ability was not enough? As for the accusation that she cheated, as long as she denied it all the way, then could that be considered as evidence? The examiner saw that she refused to admit her guilt, so the corners of his mouth started to twitch. It was not that they hadn't heard of cheating cases in other academies, but once they had been seen through, to have such thick skin and deny it without knowing how shameful the act was, and to have no intention to repent was never heard of before. This was simply a marvel. The examiner continued. There's also the third round of assessment. Don't tell me that you didn't know that 30 meters away from the center of the array was where the intensity of the pressure was at the weakest, with only 30% or so. The area of the array was obviously so big, but you had to walk to exactly 30 meters away from the center area. Don't tell me that was by chance as well. Isn't this just too coincidental? When he said these, the crowd was shocked. What? So the pressure in the array's inner portion wasn't stronger? So the position that Bairuo Qi sat at was where the intensity was at its lowest. No wonder. I had always felt that it was weird that why was she only at second stage first level, but she's able to persist even longer than so many second stage fifth level practitioners. So the truth is like this absolutely is cheating. It's obviously unfair that she had obtained such high marks. Bairuo Qi was pressured by the condemned glares from the crowd, and she felt exceptionally guilty, but she absolutely could not admit that she cheated. That was really a coincidence. What do you want me to say? What cheating? We're all guesses by yourself. The examiner said, then could you explain why was it that everyone all sat by the boundary of the array and only you alone walked to the inner zone? Bairuo Qi's guilty eyes floated around and suddenly fell on a Huang Yueli. Seeing Huang Yueli's expression filled with ridicule, with a seeming to laugh but not laugh look, she almost fainted. At the same time, an evil thought formed in her mind. She gritted her teeth as she hissed, the array is so big, it's my freedom to sit anywhere I like. Is there any regulation that I cannot enter the inner cone? Moreover, I'm not the only one who didn't sit by the boundary of the array. There's also Bairuoli. Didn't she enter the center area as well? If you insist that I cheat, then she also cheated. The crowd's gaze all fell upon Huang Yue. Speaking of that, the other young lady who was from South Yu Kingdom had even astonishing results than by Ruo Qi. She had gotten first place unknowingly, and even easily crushed Song Yaru, that peerless talent. To have lost to an unknown young lass. Just how many people were feeling unreconciled? How many people had swallowed this to the verge of throwing up blood? From the looks of it, since by Ruo Qi had cheated, then Huang Yue, who had even outstanding results than her, might have cheated as well. Otherwise, how could she be so heaven-defying? You can also listen on. Hearing Bao Ruo Qi's obvious words to change the focus of attention, Huang Yue's lips curled upwards as her smile turned even more enchanting. After breaking through to third stage realm, Huang Yue's looks had somewhat upgraded. Even though there wasn't much changes from her previous look, but she had imperceptibly become much prettier. Even if she had to stand next to Song Yaru, the famous beauty in Sky Cloud City, she would have the upper hand. At this moment, her smile was delicate and attractive, as many young men were lost while looking at her. But this sweet smile, in by Ruo Qi's eyes, was extremely terrifying. She unconsciously took a step back. "W, what are you thinking of? What's there to smile about? I'm telling you, don't think just because your cultivation is much higher, then you'll be able to threaten me." Huang Yue smiled while shaking her head. That pair of clear eyes contained a glint of sympathy, as though she was looking at a retard. "Your joke is really funny. Do I even need to cheat? My cultivation is originally the highest among this batch of examinees. Today, before I advanced, I was already at second stage 9 level cultivation, so to obtain first place was expected. As for trash who had just entered the second stage like you, what right do you have to question me?" Initially, she was still all smiles as her tone was gentle and soft, but as she continued to the end of her words, her tone had obviously become severe. When she was completing her last sentence, the words she spat out even contained some traces of pressure from her profound energy. When her words were out, Bai Ruo Qi was pressured until her blood was raging and her chest felt dull, as she almost spat out blood. This was the might that a superior had over a junior, and now that she was already a third stage third level practitioner, to deal with Bai Ruo Qi as second stage first level practitioner was a breeze. She didn't even need to use any profound skill or personally strike out. Only just using the pressure was enough to make Bai Ruo Qi seriously injured. This powerful presence slowly spread out, and the surrounding new students were affected, as well as they subconsciously took a few steps backwards. At the same time, their eyes were filled with shock. Several new students who had felt unreconciled earlier could not help but to acknowledge her power. That's right, she was now a third stage practitioner. Her might had long exceeded theirs. No matter how far away or how insignificant her background was, she could absolutely crush them now. Under the absolute difference in power, to doubt the other party would only invite trouble for themselves. "Great! You're worthy of being Bai Lu Feng's daughter. You really resemble some senses of his imposing attitude that year." A burst of laughter was heard from the back of the crowd. Following that, several elderly people walked up towards him from the back. The examiner raised his head as his expression changed and hurriedly welcomed them and prostrated to the ground. "Principal Jiang, why have you graced the occasion with your presence?" The new students all went into a blank as they quickly looked at the elderly man, their excited faces filled with shock and delight. "Principal Jiang, could this be Celestial Light Academy's one and only original principal, Jiang Tuxin?" Jiang Tuxin himself was a very powerful man and was an 8th-stage realm practitioner. In the entire Sky Cloud City, he was considered as one of the top exponents. Moreover, his backing was Celestial Light Sect, and to be sent here to fully take charge of Celestial Light Academy. One of the most important properties in the sect, he was considered as someone with status and was deemed as a valuable person. To the new students who were present, Jiang Tuxin was absolutely a person who they need to look up to, as he belonged to the legendary expert level. Normally, The Academy's daily affairs were handled by Vice Principal Ling, so Jiang Tuxin rarely showed his presence. No one had expected that on their first day of entering Celestial Light Academy, they would be able to meet Principal Jiang. You can also listen on. The new students were all extremely excited as they followed the examiner and prostrated onto the ground. Nice to meet you, Principal Jiang. Only Huang Yuli didn't follow suit, and as the crowd suddenly lowered their heights, her presence immediately stuck out. However, not only was Jiang Tuxin not angry, he actually laughed as his eyes were filled with admiration. Not bad at all. You're by Lu Feng's daughter? I met your mother that year, and that was when your parents had just got married. In a blink of an eye, you've already grown so big, and you really resemble your mother. However, that temper resembles more to your father. Huang Yuli saw that there wasn't any hypocrisy hidden in his kindness and instantly generated some senses of liking for him. An elderly person with good moral standing and reputation like Principal Jiang was able to treat her with kindly and with such enthusiasm came naturally from her father's face. So Huang Yuli wasn't someone who did no better. She instantly cupped her hand in obeisance as she saluted to him. Nice to meet you, Principal Jiang. My father is indeed by Lu Feng. Great, that's really great. Jiang Tuxin's wrinkled face was filled with smiles. That year, I had personally taught your father, and he is one of the most talented practitioners that I had ever met. But unfortunately, he refused to join our Celestial Light sect. Today, you have inherited your father's innate talent and also entered Celestial Light Academy. So this really made me feel extremely gratified. I heard that you had obtained first place in this round of enrollment examinations, and Vice Principal Ling had already given you the position of a course student. Additionally, I shall now give you 3 chances to choose any profound armament or treasures in the profound weapon chambers and any cultivation method in the first 3 levels of the scripture depository. So you must work hard. With your innate talent, when you join Celestial Light Academy, there are high hopes of you becoming one of the inner disciples. Don't disappoint me. When Huang Yuli heard this, she instantly felt disappointed. To have an opportunity to choose profound armaments or cultivation methods, to her, was equivalent to not gaining any advantages. In her previous life, she had obtained various cultivation methods, and those would definitely much higher leveled than the cultivation methods for course students to train. As for profound armaments, she herself could refine it. Just merely an academy's profound armament chambers was probably not much better than armaments, which she could refine herself. It was better to give her spirit jades or high-level medicinal herbs, which was much practical. But she didn't express that out and politely replied, "Thank you, Principal Jiang, for your benevolence. I will do my best to pursue my cultivation." Principal Jiang was very satisfied with her attitude as he nodded his head. At this moment, the crowd went into another round of bustling. Even though Huang Yuli didn't thought much of the advantages that Jiang Tuxin gave to her, but in the eyes of the new students, this was a huge pie that had dropped out from the sky. This was a big opportunity that everyone would grab, even in their dreams. The profound armament chambers was filled with profound armaments, which were 4th tier and above. As for the treasures that filled the shelves, those were likely profound weapons, which were 5th tier upper grade and above. Each piece of these profound armaments were extremely pricey, and even as core students, they would need to accumulate masses of star currency before they could enter in exchange for 1 piece. So very few people was able to obtain 2 pieces and above. As for Celestial Light Academy's cultivation methods, it was even more famous. Ordinary students could only enter the 1st level of the scripture depository, while core students could enter the 2nd level. But Principal Jiang had directly allowed Huang Yuli to casually enter the 3rd level to pick any cultivation method she wished. What concept was that? The scripture depository was filled with earth-tier, medium-grade, profound skills and cultivation methods. If one could choose something which was suitable for their use, just learning a few moves would enable that person to move horizontally in Celestial Light Academy. You can also listen on. Everyone's eyes were filled with envy as they looked upon Huang Yueli. When Bai Ruoqi saw what was happening and heard Principal Zhang's praises and promised rewards, her heart felt especially sour. As Principal Zhang was preparing to leave, she hurriedly shot up like an arrow and blocked his passage. PR, Principal Zhang. Jiang Tuxin paused momentarily as he frowned and looked at Bai Ruoqi. Who are you? Bai Ruoqi hastily replied. Principal Jiang, I'm also from South Yu Kingdom, and my name is Bai Ruoqi. I'm Bai Ruoli's cousin. Bai Lufeng is my uncle. Bai Ruoqi quickly clarified her status with the hope that since Principal Jiang gave that lass with such good treatment, praised her in front of everyone, and rewarding her with profound armaments and cultivation methods, wasn't it all because of Bai Lufeng? Then she was also Bai Lufeng's niece. Although a niece wasn't as close as a biological daughter, but she was still considered as a close relative. She should more or less be able to gain some advantage. At the very least, he should be able to let her retain in Celestial Light Academy. However, when Jiang Tuxin heard her introduce herself, he didn't express an overjoyed look like what she had expected. Instead, his face sunk. An 8-stage practitioner's imposing manner was shockingly strong, and even if Jiang Tuxin didn't intentionally release his might, it still made Bai Ruoqi trembled. You are Bai Ruoqi? Yes. Bai Ruoqi somehow felt something was amiss. As expected, Jiang Tuxin snorted heavily as he spoke sternly. So you're that girl who cheated today's examinations. It had been several decades since anyone dared to cheat in Celestial Light Academy. How shameless are you? And to think that you're Bai Lufeng's niece. With you as his niece, it has certainly brought him discredit. Jiang Tuxin's tone was extremely severe as he displayed his imposing manner. Just a few stern words had already shocked the examinees present as they all lowered their heads, not daring to breathe out loud. As for Bai Ruoqi, she was soaked entirely in her own sweat as she stood there blankly, totally immobile. How? How could this happen? Hadn't Principal Jiang just came over? How did he find out about her self-cheating? However, at this point in time, there wasn't any moment for her to think deeply as her legs gave way and she knelt down onto the ground crying out loud. Principal Jiang, I know I've done wrongly. I'm in the wrong. I shouldn't have cheated in the examination. It's because I really want to enroll into Celestial Light Academy, and I'm really worried that I would make my uncle lose face. So I took the risk. Now I know I'm in the wrong. I beg Principal to give me another chance. As long as I can stay in Celestial Light Academy, I resolve to change and make a fresh new start and will never ever cheat again. Bai Ruoqi cried extremely sadly as her eyes turned red, displaying a remorseful look. All the people present were shocked as they stared with their wide eyes and started discussing in whispers. Heavens, Bai Ruoqi has admitted that she really cheated. Isn't that so? Earlier the evidence was already so obvious, but she was denying it so badly. Now that Principal is here, she can no longer keep up with it? How can we retain such a person in Celestial Light Academy? Various ridicule and jeering came from all around, and Bai Ruoqi was both ashamed and furious as her face flushed into beetroot red. She couldn't wait to hide herself into a hole in the ground. This time, not only had she lost face, she had even thrown it into Sky Cloud City. Once the matter of cheating in examinations was leaked out, she would become a laughingstock among the entire Sky Cloud City's practitioners, never able to raise her head up high. You can also listen on. If it wasn't for the current situation, even if she was beaten to death, Bai Ruoqi would never admit that she cheated. But she was very clear that as long as she admitted her wrongdoing in front of Principal Jiang and expressed that she would repent and turn over a new leaf, then would she be able to gain Jiang Tuxin's sympathy and mercy to let her stay. Bai Ruoqi clenched her teeth as she tried her best to suppress the melancholy feeling and continued howling. Principal Jiang, please let me stay on account of my uncle's face. Surely you won't hope that my uncle would see his own niece being chased out of Celestial Light Academy when he returns? He will be so disappointed. He. Why will my father be disappointed? he would only be more than happy. A sweet young voice was heard laughing. You, Bai Ruo Chi suddenly jerked her head upwards. Huang Yueli smiled indifferently. Second sister, please stop throwing our Bai family's reputation. What position does my father hold? If news of his niece cheating and still lingered around refusing to leave were spread, that would really make him embarrassed. Since you have the guts to do such a thing, then you should be able to take the consequences. What does acting pitiful do? That's absolutely right. Jiang Tuxin gave Huang Yueli a glance of admiration. Following that, he looked at Bai Ruo Chi as his glare turned icy. Earlier when I arrived, I could still hear you trying to deny the allegations. But now that you've been exposed, you start to cry and act pitiful? I'd have never expected that Bai Lu Feng's lifelong illustrious name had almost been ruined by a shameless lass like you. Vice Principal Ling, according to school regulations, what is the punishment for cheating? Vice Principal Ling hurriedly walked over and said, according to school regulations, if officially enrolled students were to be caught cheating, they would be stripped of their entire cultivation and meridians deposed and driven out of the academy. If there are no unexpected events, then the person would never be able to cultivate for his entire lifetime. As this Bai Ruo Chi is still not an official student, we can still barely let her keep her cultivation. After the punishment of 12 whips, she will be driven out of the academy. As for her cheating ways, I will inform all academies in South Sky region to keep record of her. Jiang Tuxin nodded and said, although the punishment is slightly lenient, but on account of Bai Lu Feng, we shall do it in this way. Quickly get our men to bring her away and not delay the new student's itinerary to tour the school. The examiner hastily replied and instructed someone to bring Bai Ruo Chi away. Bai Ruo Chi had wanted to struggle and defend herself a bit more, but Celestial Light Academy's law enforcement team were not South Yu Kingdom's Golden Scale Guards. All of them had extraordinary skills and not someone who she could resist against. Bai Ruo Chi's mouth was stuffed by someone from the back, and her meridians were subdued in a few moves, rendering her immobile and was taken away immediately. Not long after, Bai Ruo Chi's blood-curdling screeches could be heard. Apparently, she had already been brought to suffer the whip punishment. Hearing that miserable shrieks, those new students all shuddered. The crowd had originally felt satisfied that Bai Ruo Chi was punished for her cheating ways as they held smiles on their faces, but when they heard her blood-curdling screeches, all of them started to be terrified. Bai Ruo Chi seemed to be the niece of some important person in Celestial Light Academy, but yet she was punished to such a miserable state. She was already being whipped as a punishment, and after that, her cheating record would be informed to all academies. To be turned away from Celestial Light Academy because of such a reason, which other academy would dare to take her in? Wouldn't Bai Ruo Chi's future be all ruined? Terrifying, too terrifying. Moreover, earlier Principal Jiang had mentioned if an official student was caught cheating, that student would be stripped of his cultivation. You can also listen on. Celestial Light Academy's regulations were so strict, and anyone who dared to violate the school regulations would pay a heavy price for it. All the new students became aware of the dangers, and the joy from being recruited earlier had all disappeared. In replacement, they revered Celestial Light Academy. Huang Yueli noticed the crowd's reaction and smiled while lost in thought. This Principal Jiang was proven to be a famed practitioner. After managing Celestial Light Academy for so many years, the method he took was really not ordinary. Not only had he dealt with Bai Ruo Chi, he also killed a chicken to warn the monkeys. All of these new students were all held in high respects before they entered the school, as their eyes were on the top of their heads. But at this moment, they had turned into obedient children. After Principal Jiang left, the examiner brought the new students to the inside of the academy. Following that, he got several older senior students to bring the new students to tour the academy. Celestial Light Academy's floor area was extremely big. Not only did it occupy an entire spiritual artery, the circumference of several hundred miles even had more than 10 individual training grounds and specialized closed-door cultivation rooms for students to cultivate. These closed-door cultivation rooms were built along the spiritual artery's core zone and accompanied with qi gathering array. The profound qi within were abundant, so it took only half the effort while cultivating. Even Huang Yueli took interest in this. Ever since she was reborn, she didn't had any chance to cultivate in such a high-class closed-door cultivation room, and just taking in those sparse, profound qi from the air, even if she had set up a qi gathering array, the effect really made one wanted to cry. A senior brother with the surname Lin introduced, "Everyone has seen these closed-door cultivation rooms on the spiritual artery. The profound qi in abundant and the cultivation effects are extremely good. But if you want to enter the closed-door cultivation room, you will need to pay a large amount of star currency. So temporarily, you will not get the chance." Star currency? What's that? Someone asked immediately. Senior brother Lin patiently explained. Star currency is the commonly used currency in Celestial Light Academy. There are many facilities in the Academy which requires payment by star currency. For example, to enter the closed-door cultivation rooms, or Sutra Depository to rent cultivation methods, or profound skills manuals. But for yearly promotion, there would be a minimum target of star currency before you could be promoted. There are many ways to obtain star currency. To explain simply, it is distributed based on everyone's contributions, big or small, and the marks you obtain. Take this round's enrollment examinations, for example. Everyone would have obtained star currency as a reward. First place will get 100 coins. Second place would get 99 coins, progressively decreasing in succession, and the 100th place would get 1 star currency. So in future, when you take part in the annual examinations or various training, if you obtain the top few rankings, you will get a reward. But everyone must cherish this as within this year. This entrance examinations reward is your biggest fortune. Very few students would have star currency in their accounts within the first year, so you must cherish the fortune in your own hands. Upon hearing that, the new students became anxious. It seemed that the stiff competition within Celestial Light Academy was not only a rumor. Whatever they do, they will need star currencies, but yet they only had that few on hand. Especially those new students whose ranking were far back. Their faces held a look of despair. Heavens, they only had that pitiful amount of star currency on hand, so what could they do with it? Only Huang Yueli had an indifferent look as she asked, Senior Brother Lin, "How much star currency do we need to rent one of the closed-door cultivation rooms on this spiritual artery? Can I trouble you to tell us more?" Senior Brother Lin said, "Every closed-door cultivation room's fees are different. The more higher up the room, the more expensive it will get. You can also listen on. It costs 1 star currency a day at the foot of the mountain. As for halfway up the mountain, the fee is 5-star currency a day. The rooms near the top of the mountain is 10-star currency a day. The best rooms on the top of the mountain cost 20-star currency a day." Fwa! So expensive. The new students' expressions turned extremely ugly as sweat started to form on their foreheads. Closed-door cultivation rooms outside the academy were calculated on a monthly basis. Celestial Light Academy's rooms were actually based on day rate. Moreover, the pricing was exorbitant. Even the worst closed cultivation rooms needed 1 star currency a day. Only heavens knew that the last student to be recruited only had just 1 star currency. Moreover, from Senior Brother Lin's meaning, he had to use that 1 star currency to live throughout this year, and his entire fortune could merely cultivate for 1 day in the worst closed-door cultivation room. Even if it was first place with 100-star currency, she could only cultivate for 3 months at the foot of the mountain. 3 months was not enough for an entire year. Moreover, there were plenty of places at Celestial Light Academy which required spending. So surely it cannot be used entirely to pay for the rental of the closed-door cultivation rooms, right? Upon hearing Senior Brother Lin's introduction, the pressure on the new students grew larger. They had thought that once they entered Celestial Light Academy, they would easily obtain a huge amount of resources. So they had thought too much. There were resources everywhere, and in fact, it had been even better than what they had imagined. But no matter which one it was, they had to pay a price to exchange for it. Only the really strong people had the resources to become even stronger. The weak ones would be eliminated very soon. Senior Brother Lin looked at the new students' green and white faces, and the corners of the lips curled upwards into a smile. He was also once a newcomer and naturally knew what they were thinking about now. To take a hit was definite, but who asked them to be newcomers? They had to go through their own struggles to prove their worth before they could stand strong in the academy. All right, the tour of the closed-door cultivation is now completed. So following this, we will now go to the rear mountain and take a look at the sutra depository. Wait a while, Senior Brother Lin. Senior Brother Lin paused in his tracks, and upon turning back, HR discovered it was Huang Yue. He replied in a friendly manner, "Junior sister, what's the matter?" Huang Yue displayed outstanding performance in the new students' enrollment examinations, and at her young age, she became a third-stage practitioner. So it was imaginable that her future had boundless prospects, so Senior Brother Lin's attitude towards her was different from the others. Huang Yue said, "I won't be following you all to tour the other grounds of the academy. I intend to stay here and go into closed-door cultivation, so I'd like to ask if I can pay the star currency now, directly, and rent the closed-door cultivation room." Senior Brother Lin went into an obvious blank. Why? Yes, you can, but you really want to rent the closed-door cultivation room? Senior Brother Lin's expression was very interesting, and this was the first time he had ever heard any new students would rent a closed-door cultivation room on their first day. Even if it was a new student who had gotten first place, that 100-star currency was not enough to rave about. Huang Yue nodded. "That's right. I had broken through to the first stage realm in the third round of assessment. Perhaps it was due to the examination. My breakthrough was forced, and my base is not stable, so I'd like to immediately go into closed-door cultivation to stabilize myself." "I see." Senior Brother Lin nodded in understanding. To break through to third-stage realm was a huge matter to all core students, and they indeed needed to go into closed-door cultivation room for some time. As long as there's empty rooms, then you'll be able to rent it. I'll go help you ask, so which position do you want to rent? And how many days? You can also listen on. Huang Yue thought for a moment and replied, Then I'll take the mountain top's best closed-door cultivation room, and for now, I'll rent. 3 days for now." Senior Brother Lin blinked and thought that he had heard wrongly. What did you just say? Can you repeat yourself once again?" Huang Yue repeated herself. "I want the closed-door cultivation room on the top of the mountain. 1 day, 20-star currency that type, and I'll rent 3 days first." Senior Brother Lin almost fell onto the ground with shock, and after a moment, his senses returned to him. Why? You say you want to rent the 20-star currency a day's closed-door cultivation room?" Huang Yue was rather speechless as she replied, "Yes, that's right. It's the one which costs 20-star currency." "Senior Brother, your hearing isn't too good? Have you suffered some injury previously? Are you kidding me? You're a new student, and you want to rent the room that costs 20-star currency a day." Huang Yue heard him continuously repeating and emphasizing, and his senses turned dull, as though he had not noticed what she was saying at all, which left her with black lines all over the top of her head. "I say, Senior Brother Lin, I'm not kidding, and you didn't hear wrongly. Can you please help me to check if there are still available rooms on the mountaintop? Hey, wake up!" Brother Lin had just managed to calm himself down, and he stared at her eyes before giving his advice. "Junior sister, I advise you not to rent such an expensive room. 20-star currency a day, and you only have a total of 100-star currency. Don't think 100-star currency is a lot. Everything in the academy costs star currency, and moreover, star currency is extremely hard to earn. What's more, you're just going to rent 3 days. What can you do in those 3 days? It's a complete waste of money. Even those top 10 core students who had joined the academy long ago don't spend star currencies in the way you do." "About this, I have my own plans," Senior Brother Lin persuaded her earnestly. Huang Yue replied, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "Senior Brother Lin, I know you mean well, but I've already thought through it clearly. I need that mountaintops closed-door cultivation room, 3 days duration. If you're not able to help me rent, then I'll go find someone else to ask. Senior brother Lin sized her up for half a day, and seeing her composed expression bearing a "I've decided" look, he sighed, "All right, since you insist on not listening to my advice." Sigh. He heaved another long sigh, as that glance seemed like he felt resentful towards her for failing to meet his expectations, as though he had been looking at a wastrel from head to toe. The other new students looked like they had just met a ghost. What's called a tycoon? This was it. Other people's annual income was just 1-star currency, and she had directly rented a 20 currency per day closed-door cultivation room without batting an eyelid. Once the 3 days was up, 60-star currency would disappear. This was more than half of her fortune. This talented young lass from South Sky region's innate talent was rather high, but did she know how to calculate? Where do you find a person who would do things in such a manner? Your room rental is done. Mountaintop room number 1. 3 days duration. You can go now. Thank you, Senior Brother Lin. See you next time. No matter what thinking other people had, Huang Yueli kept an indifferent face as she received the token that Senior Brother Lin passed to her. She turned around and headed towards the mountaintop. You can also listen on. The minute the closed-door cultivation room door was opened, Huang Yueli was both overjoyed and surprised. Celestial Light Academy was really worthy of the #1 academy in the South Sky region. The cultivation terms was indeed not ordinary. From the foot of the mountain to the top, she felt that the abundant, profound energy along this spiritual artery was at least a 4th-grade spiritual artery. As for the mountaintop's closed-door cultivation room, it gathered a large amount of profound energy from heaven and earth, and there was an array which could regulate the profound energy's attributes and intensity. 20-star currencies were really well spent. Huang Yueli wasn't too worried about not having enough star currency to earn. After all, a skillful armament master didn't have to worry about that at all. She activated the array, sat down cross-legged, and started her cultivation. Due to the forced advancement, the spiritual body gathered in her body wasn't very stable, and her meridians were slightly damaged. This sort of internal injury would normally require at least a month to completely recover. But with this closed-door cultivation room, she would be able to repair all the hidden illness in her body within 3 days. The only thing to regret was that she had attempted several times to continue advancing, but every single time she was on the verge of 3rd stage 4th level, she would meet a bottleneck and stop. It seemed that if she didn't gather all the medicinal herbs recorded on 9 Phoenix Transformation, then she can forget about advancing easily. 3 days passed by in a flash. Huang Yueli stretched her body as she stood up, and at the same thing continued to ponder. These 3 days of closed-door cultivation effect wasn't too bad at all, and in future, she could come frequently to cultivate. She also heard that she could rent high-class refinery using star currency, so it would definitely be of use in future. Just from this, the places which use star currency was quite a lot. But how do they earn star currency? She thought about this on the way while walking, and as she was leaving the room, someone called out to her. "Junior Sister Bai, you have a few visitors, and they had been here since 3 days ago. Do you want to meet them?" Visitors? Before the senior sister could reply, someone called out from the back. "Bai Ruoli, it's really you." Huang Yueli turned back and saw a young lady dressed in light purple skirt pouncing toward her. "Younger sisterly, I'm Su Qinghua. We haven't met for several years already. I heard the others say the new student who got 1st place is Bairuoli from South U Kingdom, and I thought I was dreaming. Weren't you not able to cultivate in the past? How did you become so incredible so suddenly?" Huang Yueli went into a blank and quickly sought out this person from her memories. This Su Qinghua was a daughter of a reputable family from the neighboring South Ming Kingdom, and when she was young, she had followed her father to Valiant Marshall Manor as a guest and played often with the original Bairuoli. Her innate talent was a 5th grade lower, but she was very easygoing. Even after Bai Lu Feng had disappeared, she would still drop by frequently to play with Bairuoli. But ever since she had enrolled into Celestial Light Academy 2 years ago, she had lost contact with by Ruoli. Huang Yueli revealed a smile. Elder Sister Sue, it's actually you. I miss you too. As for my cultivation matters, that's a long story. She had a fond liking towards Su Qinghue. After all, with such an innate talent, but still retaining such nice personality, wasn't commonly seen. Huang Yueli and Su Qinghue started reminiscing about old times. When the both of them were talking halfway, the senior sister manager suddenly ran in. Junior sister Bai, your #1 place is really a hot potato. You just came out from closed-door cultivation, and someone had already sent you a battle invitation to fight. Battle invitation? Huang Yueli blinked her eyes as she felt slightly lost. Su Qinghue's expression, on the other hand, changed. You can also listen on You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.